Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. Very excited. It's day 2 of the AI Agents Assemble Hackathon. And today we're talking about Kestra, who's our title sponsor. And we're going to have a lot of fun. Some of you may have seen Will's beautiful face before because we have done a lot of streams together. And well, for for people who don't know you, do you want to give a quick intro and what do you do?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for hosting this webinar. Really appreciate that. My name is Will. I am based out of the UK and I am a developer advocate at Kestra. So my job is to help people like you understand what Kestra is and how you can get started using Kestra. So hopefully over the course of this week, you'll be pros of Kestra by the end of the week. And I'll be lurking around in your Discord as well to answer questions as you have them.
Amazing. And a lot of folks have joined the Kestra Slack as well. So that's quite cool. One question people are asking, yes, you can use multiple sponsored tools and you can submit multiple, like your project to multiple tracks. That is actually encouraged to increase your chances of winning. However, not one person can win all the tracks because that's not fair and that's not fun. So we will be prioritizing like one person per track. But yeah, if one person submits in all the tracks, then obviously your chances increase. And all the tools go well with each other. So you're going to be building something very cool. So yeah, Kestra, really cool price category. I think it's $4,000, some swag and some really cool stuff as well. Will you also do boat racing? Do you want to tell a little bit about that before we move forward?
Yes.
How does one get into it?
When I'm not talking about tech, I like to race sailing boats and get out in the fresh air. It's actually very good for you to not just spend all your time in front of a screen and to get out and get some fresh air. But the best way to get into it is find a local sailing club. They'll have courses and they can teach you the basics, just like with learning a new programming language. And then you just keep practicing, and practice makes perfect. And before you know it, you'll be fully independent and be able to take yourself wherever you want to go.
Amazing. And let's talk a bit about Kestra. So we mentioned that people are going to use the built-in AI agent to summarize their data from other systems. Can you tell a little bit more about the Kestra track price, like how people can win? And can you summarize what people are going to learn in today's demos? As you told me, you have 3 demos prepared.
Yeah, so I'll start with a quick overview of what Kestra is itself. Now, Kestra is an orchestrator. So the idea is that you can use it for building workflows and automating different processes. Now, specifically in the context of AI agents are very cool, right? You can do lots of interesting things with them. But the thing that often leaves them a little bit sort of difficult to put into production is being able to have them run automatically and be able to have them pass information to other tools. And that's where a tool like Kestra comes in pretty handy, because you can now take your AI agent, whatever model that's running, whether that's OpenAI's GPT-5 or Gemini's new 3 Pro model, for example. You can have your AI agent do what you want. It can then pass that information to other tasks, whether that's to then have your AI agent make decisions on behalf of you. And then it can generate files, upload files to destinations, or create tasks in a to-do list. And I've got a few different demos to sort of showcase where AI agents can sort of do some of those actual tasks for you if you give them enough sort of framework around how they work. I appreciate that my camera is a bit laggy. I don't know why. So I hope the
slideshow because
not too bad.
Your camera is fine. I have that issue as well. Do you have the Sony Alpha?
Yeah, I never had this issue.
Yeah, for me, like if I set it to 4K, I lag as well. But the good thing is the voice is clear and the screen sharing will be okay. So
okay, good
you'll
to
be
know.
all right.
Yeah,
yeah, because it's 4K or something. I don't know. We'll fix it later. All right, I'm gonna share. We're gonna share Will's screen and then take it away.
Perfect.
Oh, by the way, send in your questions in the chat. We'll be answering all the questions in the end.
Excellent. I can see someone asking about Ollama. We'll talk about Ollama as well towards the end. So when you jump into Kestra, you get this beautiful dashboard that tells you about how all of your workflows are running, if there's any issues, executions, and all that. And we can hop over to flows, and you can see I've got loads of flows. I name them really badly, so don't use me as a good example. Now, we're going to focus on 3 workflows specifically. I'm going to actually zoom those in a little bit. We've got AI add tasks, market research agent, and summarize email in real time. If I refresh these, you'll see they are all successful and they all do work. Now, there's actually a couple of different ways you can interact with AI agents inside of Kestra. The first way is using the market research agent, which I've got open here. Now, what this does is it uses the brand new Kestra AI agent. So this is a dedicated AI agent built by Kestra that will use, which gives you a lot of control. The thing that's nice about using this over maybe using a dedicated plugin for ChatGPT or Gemini is because it's all standardized, you can very quickly switch out what provider you're using. So in this case, I'm using Gemini here for this example, but I could easily switch it out to a different model, especially because models are coming out all the time. They all have their own benefits, their own personalities, their own strengths. And as a result of that, you might go, actually, for this particular task, I want to use Gemini. But for a different task, you might find using a DeepSeek model or maybe using a Claude model is actually a better fit. And there's nothing worse than building your whole workflow around Gemini just for ChatGPT to release or GPT to have a better model. And then you sit there and think, damn, now I've got to rewrite the whole thing to work with OpenAI's API, not Gemini's. And it's like, that's annoying. So, and you find this as well when you work with various coding agents, right? They let you just pick the model. You don't have to then like switch, coding agents to help you write your projects. You can just change the model. So you can use whatever model's best for what you're doing. Now for this demo, I'm using Gemini 2.5 Flash. Can't wait until we get 3 Flash. That'll be pretty nice when that comes out. And then you can also specify a system prompt. So this is telling your agent how you want it to react, how you want it to respond, and so on. In this case, we're telling it, you are a research assistant that must always follow this process. We're going to use the Taverly web search content retriever to gather information. We're going to summarize and structure that finding, and then we're going to give it some sort of guidelines on how it should do that. And then we're going to tell it to save a file as a markdown report so we can view this in a nice format afterwards. But we could then hand that file to another task in this workflow, maybe to upload it to a S3 bucket, or maybe to push it to a Git repository or whatever it might be, send it as a notification. You can do that too. And then at the bottom here, we've got content retrievers and tools. So here we've given it access to Taverly, we've given it a web API, and we've told it how many results it should give. And you can also do this, I believe, for Google Web Search as well. And we keep adding content retrievers so you can give your AI agent the tools it needs to be able to go and get the information to make a good decision. Going down a little bit further, we've got our tools. Now, this one here is a Docker MCP client. So I'm running Kestra inside a Docker, and I want Kestra to be able to save a file to Docker. So I've given it access to this Docker MCP client so it can save a file to the file system, just using a bind mount. And as you can see here, it's just going to add it to the temp folder. So that each execution, it will just store it temporary so we can then access it. But then we could pass that file to another task and have that do something a little more long term with it, like putting it in Google Drive or, whatever. So this is this example. Now we've got a prompt as well as the system message. This prompt is exactly what we wanted to research. Now we have that as an input. So every time we press execute, we can then specify what we want it to then research. Now in this particular example, we want it to research workflow and data orchestration because that is Kestra's bread and butter. And then we tell it to save the final report too. So if I press execute on that right now, we'll see it's going to get started with connecting to the various different tools and content providers and content retrievers. And it's going to be able to start coming to a decision. Now we can see it's done that already for us. If I go to outputs, we should see here. Oh, interesting. It didn't do it. Doesn't matter. I do have an example already lined up here, where it did do it. So if we go to outputs here, we can see it generated an output file, and we can see it's called report.md, which is what we asked it to do. I can now preview that directly inside of Kestra, and I can download it if I want to be able to just use it locally. And now I can see here, I can see all sorts of information, right, about the key trends for workflow orchestration. And it's given me that in this particular case, it took 11 seconds to get that information, whereas I could have spent ages doing that. So this is one way of how you could use an AI agent inside of Kestra, where you use our AI agent task to be able to do that. And this example is available as a blueprint on our website. But also, if you click on the AI agent and go to documentation, you will find there are a load of examples. So here, this is an example of doing text to summarize, multilingual agents. This one's saving files, dealing with memory. And you can see here, this one's using OpenAI as an example. And it's then you're also able to specify memory for these as well. So if you wanted to remember things between workflow executions, you can have that do it too, which is pretty neat, so that it has that context, which is one of the main benefits of an AI agent. And you can specify where it stores it. Maybe you already have a vector database. Connect that into your AI agent, off you go. Or you can have Kestra just store it in the key value store as well. So that's one example. Our next example is going to be using a dedicated plugin. So we also have dedicated plugins for all the major providers. So I believe OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, DeepSeek, Minstrel, Perplexity. There might be some more too. We keep adding them. And these are very similar in how they act. They're very similar between each other, well, other than a few minor differences. But they often have unique things that maybe you would get with just those APIs. So, for example, nowadays, a lot of these APIs have this thing called structured output, where you can go and make an API request to Gemini or OpenAI and say, hello, I'd like to ask you a prompt to your model, but I'd like the response to be in a certain format so that when I get that back, I can actually do something programmatically with it to make a decision. Because getting a big block of string is quite difficult to pump into an if statement to know whether it's true or false. So in this scenario, we are adding tasks to Todoist. And the thing that's really nice about this is I can give it a JSON response schema as part of the task and say, hello there, I would love to be able to get this data in this format where we've got an array of strings and a date time. So we get a due date, we get a description, and we get a title as a string as a JSON object, which we can then pass directly into the Todoist API, which is the task we have underneath here, for being able to actually add these tasks to Todoist. And in fact, we don't actually, at the time when I made this demo originally, we didn't have a Todoist plugin. We do now, but I'm just using a post request in the HTTP request task here. And here I'm able just to pass in that information. So if we ask it, if it creates multiple tasks and it gives me an array of multiple tasks, it can just loop through both of those with this for each task and add those in separate requests. So I think we should ask it the question here. I'm going to say I need to get a prescription for medication on Friday afternoon. And then I also need to go shopping afterwards. So I can just give it natural language. I don't have to specify get prescription Friday afternoon, go shopping also Friday afternoon, but after. Instead, I can just give it this natural language and let the DeepSeek plugin here, very similar to the Kestra AI agent, to figure that out. So here we can see it's created two different tasks. And now if I go over to Todoist, we'll see I've actually got two new tasks: get prescription from pharmacy at 4 p.m. and then go shopping for 5 p.m. We can actually go into outputs and see under response here, if I make that wider, we can see it generated a due date for us in a timestamp format so that Todoist API knew what to do there. And we can see it did actually set go shopping to be later in the day. Because we said that, we didn't specify a time, we just said later. So now we've got those in here as we would expect. So that's another way that you can interact with an AI agent in Kestra, is you can use one of our dedicated plugins, which again gives you some options like the JSON response schema, which to be honest, I think most of them have nowadays. But that's one benefit here. And you can also specify your system and your user prompts as well. So if you want to be able to tell the agent how it should react, the sort of personality it might have, you can tailor those workflows there. But this is an example where you have a workflow, right, that is going to use the AI agent to decide how it's going to do something, and then it can just pass it over to tasks that can then actually do it. Whereas if you were asking ChatGPT, just can you add something to my Todoist, it would be like, no, I can't. I can tell you what you should put in it. I can summarize the information, but you would still have to go and put that information into Todoist. So that's the second example. Now, our third example, this is pretty nice. This is a nice one. One of the common use cases I see for AI agents in workflows is to summarize information. I mean, we've just seen it here with the adding tasks to a to-do list. We want to give it a bunch of information. Like you might want to be able to just write out a huge thing of, I need to do all these things. Please just sort that into a nice structured order in my to-do list. And that's where AI is very helpful of like summarizing information. Now this one's really nice. This is an email one. Now I'm going to send myself an email in a second. But what this will do is using this brand new Gmail inbox trigger that's only got released in our recent release, I can now get, anytime I get an email, this workflow will get triggered. And then when this workflow gets triggered, it will then pass the email over to the Kestra AI agent, where the system message is very simple. It says, summarize the contents of this email. So some emails, you know how they can be really long, really boring. Sometimes you just want to know what the action item is. Is this something I need to respond to? Yes or no? And in fact, you could maybe like build this workflow even further by having the workflow look at the, come to a decision on, does this email require an action in the next 24 hours? Yes or no? If yes, notify me of that action right now. If no, add it to a queue of like all the things. I'll just add it to a to-do list that I'll look at later. So this is a great way of being able to like make sure that you can focus on what you need to and let the AI agent make the decision on your behalf. And again, this one here is using OpenAI. We're using the OpenAI GPT-5 mini model. We're just having to pass it an API key there as well. And then we're just logging it, the output. So that's the other thing. Each of these AI agents produce outputs, and we can then hand those outputs to other tasks. In this case, a log task, to be able to say, here's all the information that you needed to know. Now, let me spin over here and send myself an email. While I send myself an email, do ask your questions in the chat. I want to hear from all of you. So yeah, if you've got questions on things you'd like to hear about Kestra or AI, then do let me know. Just going to bring this on here. It's really small. I'll make that bigger. Here's an email I'm going to send myself to myself. Basically, that's a lot of information. I'm not reading that. Basically, something got rescheduled. I don't know. Anyway, let's press send. Yeah, I know there's no attachment. That's fine. Right, we'll let that send. If I now go to executions, we'll see that, in fact, if I give this a refresh, hopefully this is going to work. Hopefully this is going to work. As you can see, it did work earlier. Things get shy when you do live demos. That's the problem. I've got an idea. I'm just gonna cheat a little bit here. Don't mind me. I'm just gonna disable the trigger and re-enable it. It's quite a new trigger. Give it a little bump like that, and then you can see just like that, it has worked. This just executed just a few seconds ago. We can see that it has taken that information. Here's the information that's generated, but we can actually go to the log task, which will give us a much easier view. That is the information. The summary is meeting moved to the finance quarter end closing. Original time this is cancelled. New time this. Great. Summarized that information. Whereas if we actually look at the overview, we can actually go over to variables here. We can go to the body and we can actually see the whole body of the email, which is long. There's a load of other things in there that's not important, such as styling. I don't need any of that information. I just need the AI agent to go through and summarize that for me, and it does a lot of that for me. So very nice. Now I'm going to have a quick pause and just quickly answer a couple of questions about this particular demo. Someone says, explain the trigger. Like, how are the trigger things from our own front end side? Do we have to grab the API to hit it? Now, if you want to trigger workflows from your own front ends, we have a webhook trigger. So you can have the webhook be triggered from your front end application. And as part of that webhook, you can put a load of information in the body, which you can then access using these expressions like so. So you can then pass that information straight to your workflow. And then at the end, you could have a HTTP request, send the information back to your front end or application as well. A bit like I did with Todoist, where I was able to send information back. So you can have the workflow, receive the information, hand it over to the AI agent, ask it information. You can give it a system prompt, all that, have it figure it out, maybe pass the information around to some other tasks, and then you can make a response back to your front end or wherever you started to destinate. It started this sort of interaction. Yeah, so that gives you sort of a bit of an overview of AI agents inside of Kestra. There's obviously so many ways you can build with them. So for the prize category, I'm excited to see what interesting use cases you build with these AI agents, where you have the ability, right, to you have the ability here to add whatever plugins you like to these AI agents. Kestra has a lot of plugins. Like when I say a lot of plugins, I mean we have over 1,000 plugins. So if you are looking to be able to use your AI agent along with other tools you're already using, there's a good chance Kestra can integrate with those. And with the help of things like our outputs and expressions, you can pass that data between the tasks and let the other tasks be able to run away with that. Where can we find this webhook? Let me show you the webhook one. A webhook example. We have a webhook trigger that looks like that is not the trigger that I was thinking of. I was thinking of this one. This is a webhook trigger. So you add this trigger to your YAML flow code at the bottom of your workflow. And I can actually show an example of this quite easily by copying and pasting this into an instance. So I just take this and make a new workflow. And I do something like that. We've got a new workflow here with our webhook trigger. I can then go to triggers, and here I can copy a URL for my trigger. Now, if I paste this and run this, we can see that this has now executed our workflow. If I now go back to our workflow, we can see under executions that it was in fact successful at running this workflow. It does in fact say hello world. And we can also see some of the information under variables here. We can see the headers of when it was run. We can see that all the information you'd expect to see with a webhook, and there was no parameters passed it. So you can see nothing. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of how you could use a webhook to trigger a workflow. We also have a useful question here. Oh, this is a great question about AI agents. Let me help you out there. So you've asked a question, which is, can we pass payload into the webhook? You absolutely can. Similar to this summarize email task that I did have open briefly. Here we go. This email, kind of like a webhook, you could say almost. This is producing information. If I go back to the webhook one, if you click on this, the documentation on the right-hand side automatically reflects the task you have selected. And you'll see under outputs, these are outputs of that this webhook will generate. So we'll get body, headers, and parameters. Now, I didn't pass a body to it, but if you did pass a body, it would be available under trigger.body, and then you can be able to do whatever you want with that information in your tasks. So here is an example where trigger.body is you can access the information inside of it like so, and tell the workflow to only run if the body contains certain information. So hopefully that is what you're looking to see. There's also properties too for setting up these different triggers. So I definitely recommend checking those out. And the examples are there to help you. So that's that question. We're going to roll back a second. Can we have multiple agents running at once? Yes, you can. In fact, we actually have an example, which I'm going to steal from our documentation because I don't have it running currently. We're gonna add this live because why not? Examples. So we have an example where, AI agent example. I was selecting the provider. I want to see the example. So if we scroll down, there's an example here that uses 2 AI agents, this one, for example. And this is something that's really nice. If we just add this in here, this workflow here, secret, like so. Great. So that should work for me. So I have two tasks here. I've got AI agent number 1 and AI agent number 2. Now, both of these AI agents are given the same provider, but you could run them with different providers if you wanted. You could run one on Gemini and one on OpenAI. You could give them different system prompts, so they will have different personalities. But the key thing with this demo is the memory and being able to pass that memory between the different providers. Now, because I'm using plugin defaults, basically all these values will be the same between them. The key things are I'm giving them different prompts. But if you did want to have multiple agents running at once, you could totally do that, especially because we have a parallel task where you can easily run these in parallel. And this scenario wouldn't work because the second one very much relies on the first one. But it is an example of where you could have an AI agent, have multiple agents processing different things and passing data between them using memory. Here, for example, we've got the first agent saying that the name of the person, and we can see that that is running as we speak. Hopefully it works. Obviously, I'm making this work live, so anything could happen. The first agent works as expected, no problems. Second agent also works. Now, if we actually go to the overview, the logs, and go to Gantt view again. We asked it, hi, my name is John and I live in New York. And then we ask it, what's my name and where do I live? So if I go back to that execution, we can see that it goes, you said your name is John and you live in New York. And I can see that under outputs too, under the text output, you said your name is John and you live in New York. Now, if we actually go to the key value store for a second, we can actually see this is what the key value store has stored. We've got the key John, and then these are all of the attributes that it's added. So it can then go and revisit this in future. And so this means if I was to get rid of this first task, right, like so, and then press execute, you'll see that in theory, I haven't tried this, but in theory, it will still know our name because it can access that memory. And we've given it key instructions of the memory ID, which was John, which we saw, John and John. So pretty handy, if you ask me. So that's an example where you might have multiple agents. We are currently working on, and I don't think it's quite live at the moment, but ask away in our Discord and in the Discord server, or you could join the Kestra community and ask there too. We are looking at ways of being able to have AI agents delegate tasks to other AI agents. So if we go back to our market research example, we had tools here, and we're looking to have an example where you can have an AI agent as a tool. So you can actually tell your AI agent to then give certain things to Gemini. Like if this is more, I don't know, I'm just going to use examples. These are definitely not accurate, but let's say you're doing coding things, you might want Gemini to focus on those. And if you're doing more like writing, or if the task at hand is more writing focused, then you might hand that over to Claude. That's my personal experience, at least. I tend to use Claude for more writing and like planning sort of things, and I use Gemini for more kind of like technical. Same with OpenAI. But you can then have it delegate. You could give it one prompt and have it figure out which AI agent should handle which part of the process. So I'd be curious for some of you to play around with that as well and figure out if you can figure out interesting ways to delegate to different agents, and if you can actually get value out of that, or if that's just overcomplicating the scenario. Of a multi-model approach, under hood is a state being passed which stored the data and passed to another node. For this one, the data is being stored. I don't know how it works for being able to delegate, but for the memory thing, it's all being done using this key value store. And it obviously has a very short expiry as well, so that it runs out, but you can change that expiry too. I've only set it to 1 minute, but you could change it to longer if you wanted. You can change these providers to be other things too. I believe it supports... I actually don't know what it supports. Should we see what it supports? Definitions. There's a lot of definitions. This needs a bit of work. I'm not going to look at those now. There's a lot of them. But there are memory providers, I believe, for... let me just remove that for a second. Let's see if the autocomplete... I'm on a develop image, so it might not work. No, nothing. But we do definitely support vector search DBs. I'm pretty sure vector DBs, so you can use those too. Other questions that people ask: if I am using Ollama, how to configure in Kestra? Where are the model providers? So Ollama, we actually have an Ollama plugin now, which basically runs the Ollama CLI in a Docker container, and you can have it rely on Ollama images you have on your base machine using a property. If we go to plugins, we can actually search for Ollama like so. And here we can see Ollama as its own dedicated task, but you can also use Ollama as a provider for Amazon Bedrock, I believe, maybe. Where did I see Ollama? Hang on. Ollama. I can just search Ollama. Here you go. Ollama is an AI, a plugin, is a provider. So you can, with the Kestra AI agent as well, just provide Ollama. You just got to point it either to Ollama running on your system, because Ollama can run as a server. And then models wise, it will just use whatever model you want it to use. And that is the beauty of Ollama. If we go to Ollama quickly, I haven't been to Ollama in ages. I know they've got a cloud offering now, but yeah, if you go to the Ollama website, you just need to specify specifically which model, whether that's GPT OSS latest, 20 billion, whatever. Obviously, it's going to very much depend on your system's performance. I personally found, and someone did actually ask us at the start, which I'm going to revisit this question now. Let me try and find the question. Talk about running Ollama locally, which we definitely will do. I'm just trying to find the question. Someone asked a really good question about Ollama. If you remember that question, ask it again. I think it was about parameters, large language models and their parameters. And I would love to talk about that. I just can't find the question. Let me see if I can find the question. I remember roughly what it said, so I'm going to just talk about. Here we go. Can you talk about large language models using Ollama, and also please discuss about various large language models like 1 billion parameters, 4 billion, 7 billion. So typically, the more parameters it has, typically the better the answer is going to be. That's a very broad overview, but as a result, it's also going to be require a lot more performance. And because I know a lot of you want to use Ollama because there are no costs associated, you won't run into API limits that you will with a free tiers on OpenAI, Gemini, etc. Then there's a lot of benefit there, but it does require a lot of performance. Now, I struggle to run GPT OSS on my MacBook. I tried to run the 20 billion model, which is still 14 gigabytes. They have a little bit of guidance on their GitHub, which I'll open up here, on what models you should run. They do say, let's see if I can find it here. If you have at least 8 gigabytes of RAM, then you should be able to run the 7 billion models, 16 gigabytes to run 13 billion, 32 gigabytes to run 33. Now, I have a bizarrely 18 gigabyte model laptop, so that means I can run the 13 billion models. So in this case, I won't be able to run open source GPT. In theory, it's too big, and which is true because I tried running it and it didn't work. It made my laptop freeze. But models that I have used before include Gemma 3. Gemma 3's got a really small model, even smaller now. Wow, 270 million. I've used the 1 billion before. It's quite small. I might have used the 4 billion, but the 1 billion is quite good. It's not too big. It's quite quick. It's just not the highest quality and outputs. But the key thing with this hackathon is playing around with the models, understanding which models sort of are better suited to the task you have. And that's where using something like Google's AI Studio might be quite a good tool for figuring out between all of Google's models, which ones are quite good. There's other tools like OpenRouter, I think it is, that let you run the same task into multiple agents. Now, you can also do that with Ollama. If you run Ollama locally with Open Web UI, you can then have Open Web UI, which is basically just a pretty front end that looks like ChatGPT, but it will connect to your Ollama instance. That's a great tool because it lets you ask the same question to different models. So you can then test what the response is like, if it's the sort of response you want, if it isn't. So definitely would recommend playing around with that as part of building your workflows, because the main thing about the workflows is finding a model that does what you need. But there's loads of them. Some of them are smaller and some of them are bigger. And like here, you can use some of these tabs to help you filter it out. If we host Ollama, it will cost more money, I guess. Well, in theory, if you don't actually deploy Kestra and you just run it locally, which is normally fine for development cases, and you run Ollama locally, that's fine. But you would probably find that if you were to go and spin up a VM in the cloud, you'd need a GPU-based VM, and that would be expensive, and you're probably better off just paying for an API access. It's also really, I mean, you saw how quick like the DeepSeek one was, right? With the well, all of these have been quite quick because they're all just using the API. The Kestra AI agent is effectively a wrapper around those APIs, but it gives you a lot more functionality like memory and things like that, which the APIs on their own don't give you. And I've done dedicated videos on sort of exploring those sort of things. So if you are interested to learn a bit more about playing around with those, recommend going to the Kestra YouTube channel and checking out those various different videos on interacting with these AI models. So definitely something to bear in mind. But yeah, Ollama is a good option for running locally, but you will probably be disappointed with the performance on a laptop, especially. It will be really slow, and the quality of the things will probably be not fantastic. But I'm curious to hear in the chat from you lot on your experience with some of the Ollama models. Are there any particular models to avoid? Any models to definitely use? Yeah, let us know. But yeah, do send your questions in the chat. I'll be doing my best to try and answer those. Looks like I'm a slideshow again. I'm going to stop screen sharing, see if that helps. Someone asks, TPS for local models are usually really low unless we get a home lab or something. APIs are always faster. Yeah, I would definitely recommend the APIs. And some of them have really good free tiers as well. Definitely worth checking out. I'm pretty certain I've been just using the Gemini free tier. Definitely worth looking out for them. And some of platforms give you other good free tiers. Yeah, if you find one, share it in the Discord, share around like good models that people can use. Kestra does support a lot of them. So yeah, it shouldn't really get in the way of building your AI models. Someone asks, can you show us the working of AI add task workflow again? Yeah, let me reshare my screen back to the workflow. Okay, so the adding task one. So I'll walk through this workflow step by step so you can see what it does. At the top here, we have an input. This input is made to look pretty. So it says, what would you like to add to your task today, using this display name and a description, which will also be added here in the bottom. And it's just a string where we can give it information, and it's going to pass this input straight into our chat completion task as the input. Now, there are two types of inputs for this type of model. There are system messages and they are user messages. Now, system messages are typically how you would tell the model to interact, the personality, the kind of way you want it to respond with the information. Maybe you want it to only give you one-word answers, those sort of things. And here I've specified that I want it to help me write a to-do list inside of Todoist, so it knows that's what it's doing. I need you to return any user message as a tasks in JSON format only. There might be multiple tasks. The current time is this. The reason I give it the current time is so that when I say this afternoon, it knows it has context on what that is. And without that, it struggles a little bit. Now, the JSON response schema. Now, my best advice here is to go and check out the API references for OpenAI, DeepSeek, Gemini on how they want this data to be part of the schema. I've seen better schemas. The OpenAI DeepSeek one there's a lot of information here for arguably not that much. If I go back to the executions for a second and we have a look at our last execution, you can see under the outputs, we can see the response. Like there's only 3 fields there, and there's obviously an array of them, but it looks a lot more complicated here because we were saying here that we've got properties, we've got tasks as a field, and that's an array. Okay, so we know that's an array. And then inside that array, the items are going to be objects, and the objects are going to have properties, and the properties of the objects are going to be these 3 things. But due date itself has a little bit more information. We can't just say what it is. It's a string, but we wanted to make sure it's a datetime format string, and we specifically want to make sure it's in this format. The description property here is really useful because you can describe how you want those properties to be. So in this case, I've told it to be specifically this format because that's what the Todoist API wanted you to do. So worth noting. And then it will return this JSON schema, which we can see here, right? It's given me an array. Oh, well, ignore this. That's just how it responds. But it's given me an object called tasks, which is an array which contains multiple objects. It could contain one. It could contain multiple. So definitely something to bear in mind. And then we can access that information using this expression, which you can see here. If I didn't accidentally drag the semicolon, the curly bracket, where we can do outputs.thetaskid.response. Then we can use JQ here to be able to inspect that particular string, because the key thing is Kestra outputs will return as strings. Then we can use JQ to effectively turn that into a JSON, and then we can inspect how we want to get the data out of that JSON. Then we can use this first expression here because JQ returns things as an array, even if it's an array of one object. Bit annoying. We can use first here to get it out of that array. So it's then the data. In this case, it's actually an array inside an array, but we want just the inside array, which is the array of objects. So it can loop through them, and then it will hand over using task run.value each of those objects. So one task run will be this object, and the next task run will be this object. And then inside that task run, we can use JQ again to access the title, the description, and the due date. And we can then just hand those over here to the body of our API request. So hopefully that helps you understand how you could use this as an example for building a workflow where the AI agent is giving you data in a format that your workflow can then go and do other things with. Other questions. Interestingly, someone said Grok SDK is free, but it doesn't give appropriate results and is less smarter. Do you have any alternatives for language models which give better results on understanding the prompt and is faster? Oh, that is a good question. I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to answer that question. So what I would recommend is discussing amongst yourselves on what you have found. From my personal experience, the free models are always hit or miss unless they're massive. I mean, I've tried using a bunch of free models and they're all just like they basically are so dumb that it almost feels like they're not worth using. They give unreliable responses. Even when you explicitly say in your system prompt, only respond with one word, sometimes they don't, and they seem to hallucinate a lot more, I find. So I definitely would tread with caution and try and utilize those free tiers.
Yeah, if you want free ones, say Llama 3.18b, and there's the Quen models as well. They are quite nice. Yeah.
Cool. I see Kunal spreading some wisdom.
There's another question.
Hosting Kestra on EC2, how much storage does it take? I guess it needs 4 gigabytes of RAM, but not sure about storage. We do actually have on our website, I'm going to check it now while we discuss. Under installation, it is actually a requirement on what you need to install Kestra. I'm pretty certain storage-wise, you're not going to need huge amounts. It depends on what you're doing with the workflows. If you're obviously using AI models, you're going to need enough storage to store those models if you're using something like Ollama. If you're not using something like Ollama, then you're going to use very little storage. So I would probably just keep it like, I think 20 gigabytes is standard. That'll be plenty for what you're trying to do. I'm pretty certain we have information on that available somewhere. Let me just double check. We recommend to find what we recommend. We do recommend at least 4 gigabytes of memory though, and 2 vCPUs as well. So make sure that you have those two things to make sure that everything works as expected. For the multi-agent workflows, would you suggest invoking flows from flows? Can we do that and suggest suggestions for the same? Yes, you can. So Kestra itself has an MCP server. So this means you can have your Kestra AI agent use the MCP server to interact with other Kestra flows. So you could have flows effectively treated like functions, right? Where you have a load of different steps packaged up into their own workflows. And as a result of that, what you can do is then tell your AI agent, okay, I want you to add tasks to the Todoist. And instead of that being in your workflow, it just calls the dedicated workflow for adding tasks to Todoist, where all it needs is an input of the data and it will handle the rest. And so that's a really nice way. And actually, we have a demo of that too that I can demonstrate quickly. I am going to have to, again, try and run it live and hope that it doesn't break. If Kunal, you could add my screen share back. We'll see if it works. I am looking for it. I know we have an example. I just need to find it. I know we definitely have an example on the blogs. So if I go to blogs and we have a little look here, under the blogs, we recently did an AI agents blog post, and in here there is definitely, that's far too zoomed in. We definitely have an example for this example. Here we go, dynamic flow orchestration. So let me now make a new workflow and paste this in. Now, this might not work because I don't actually have many of the tutorial. In fact, I have none of the tutorial flows installed. Very good. So I'm going to quickly spin up a separate Kestra instance. Do hold while I log in. Let's have a look. Does this have the tutorial flows? It has some of them. Yeah, it does. Great. So what we can do is install this one and just make sure it's using key value. Great. So I have another workflow set up here. I'm going to just, here we go. So this workflow is asking you to select your orchestration use case. And the idea is that this will then run our tutorial workflows, which are orientated around these use cases. So here we've basically said that business automation, we're mapping the different names to the name of the workflows. And then it will use the kestra.url. And if it doesn't have that, it will use localhost 8080 to be able to run these using the Kestra MCP server. So if I click execute here, and I know that I have the data engineering pipeline set up on Kestra, we can see that it didn't fail. Yeah, I know why. I'm in a namespace that doesn't have the things I need in it. Let me just change that again. Try again. Nothing happened here. Oh, it already exists. Even better. Flow cooling agent. Should we find it? Flow cooling agent in company.team. So if I try that again, I execute the data engineering pipeline. Yep, that should be fine. Should work. Live demo, making it on the fly. You'll see that it's going to be able to use the AI agent here to start a new execution. If I actually go over to executions, we can see that in fact it did call, the workflow cooling agent did work, and it did call the data engineering pipeline. Now it did fail, but that's because of a breaking change in a recent update. But we can very quickly fix it where no one will notice that it broke. And I can go back to our flow cooling agent like so, click execute, data engineering pipeline, press execute. We'll see that it's going to execute that workflow again. I can click on this link. It's going to jump me straight into the execution. And we can see that it was in fact successful, other than it has failed, but we'll ignore the fact that it failed because it did all the other things. It's just a log task that failed. And we can see that in fact did work. And we can see it got us all that query data in a nice table. Very good. Very good. So that's one way where you can have MCP server call different parts of Kestra using our Kestra API. So if that's something you're interested in, ask away in the Discord. I'll keep an eye, try and give you links to these. But this AI agents blog post, which I believe was shared as part of the hackathon, that has this blog post, which has a bunch of different examples using the Kestra AI agent, including stuff using the MCP server, using memory, using different tool providers. So that's all the sort of stuff you need to get started. Any other questions before we begin to wrap things up?
Someone's like, you look like AI. And I'm like, Will's
I mean, yeah, I could be AI if I keep freezing.
Call me AI because I'm the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take it. I am the future.
Yeah, cool. But Will has a nice setup.
I know. I'm going to get replaced by these AI agents before I know it. It's actually going to be really depressing because they're the ones that always have the like over the top like blurry background and bright camera and
I
a
think,
shock.
yeah, I think it looks great.
Okay.
Cool. I believe we got all the questions answered. Okay. Should we wrap it up here? It's been 50 minutes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Everyone's time. But yeah, I think join the Discord server, ask your questions there. Join the Kestra Slack channel. I emailed everyone about that today. If you're registered for the hackathon, if you are not taking part in the hackathon yet, you still have time. It's going to be running throughout the week, so you can register anytime. You can find the links in the description or on vmakedevs.org, and all the information that you need is on the website, the vmakedevs website. And thanks for watching. And by the way, Kestra has crossed 26,000 stars. So if you haven't started already, go check it out. And it's open source, so you can start contributing as well. And big shout out to Will. Thanks for the demo and answering all the questions. Thanks everyone for joining and asking great questions. This was amazing. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.